Today we'll be creating this extra large 4th of July patriotic wreath using the Deco Mesh Poof and Curls method. You'll find a materials list in the description below. Welcome to Stillwater's Wreath Designs. Let's dive in. Hello, my wreath making friends. Come on in. How is everyone today? I am so excited to make this patriotic Deco Mesh wreath. We've just finished up with Memorial Day and it will be 4th of July before we know it, and I am just feeling all of the great feels about these patriotic wreaths. Friends, I'm going to show you real quickly some of the supplies that we'll be using. You can also find the full supplies and tools list for you below in the description of this video, so you can recreate it if you would like. The one that you're seeing today will also be available for purchase in my Etsy shop. I'll link that for you below. So we're going to be using a red 16-inch wire wreath frame, two different types of 10-inch Deco Mesh. We've got this super cute, proud to be an American sign, a variety of 2.5 and 1.5 inch wired patriotic ribbon. We're also going to use a couple of mounting brackets, some floral wire stems, a good pair of scissors, your wire snips, and of course your hot glue gun. Friends, if you are new to my channel, welcome, welcome. We're so happy to have you. Stillwater's Wreath Designs is all about front door decor, specifically wreaths and door swags. And I'm excited to share new tutorials with you every single week. Let's dive in. The first thing you need to do, friends, is go ahead and plug in your hot glue gun. We're going to get our sign prepped here. So the sign just says proud to be an American. That's going to be a perfect piece to add into our wreath here. And what we're going to do, friends, is add a couple of mounting brackets so that we can secure our sign down into the wreath when it's time. If you aren't familiar with mounting brackets, friends, they're basically a wreath maker's best friend. They're just 1 inch by 1 inch square, and they're plastic on the top. If you can see, there's holes all the way around these mounting brackets, and then the back side just has some super sticky 3M tape, and basically you can just attach these guys directly onto the back of your sign or wreath embellishment, whatever you're adding into your wreath. Not looking for perfection here, friends. Nobody's going to see these guys. So I'm just going to push those down, give them a good nice push. And then we'll just take our glue gun, just for a little bit of added strength and stability. I'm just going to run a quick bead of glue all the way around those mounting brackets to really give them lots of strength. Now we're just going to sit this sign off to the side so it can be drying while we prep our wreath frame. We're going to be using the poof and curl method today, friends, with our Deco Mesh. Let's have a quick wreath making 101. This is called a wire work wreath frame. It's 16 inches in diameter. It's got two levels, the lower and the upper, and then all the way around both the upper and the lower level, you're going to see what we call ties. And this is how we attach the Deco Mesh right into our wreath frame. And so on this upper level, you're just going to take those ties and point them inwards. And then on the lower level, friends, we're going to do exactly the opposite. We're going to point all of those ties outwards. So they're going to be pointing away from the center of our wreath. There we go. So your wreath frame should look something like this, friends. So you're going to need a good pair of scissors, and you can either measure your Deco Mesh with your self-healing mat or with a ruler. I'm going to actually use a ruler today, friends. So let me show you what we're going to do here. The first step to building this wreath is getting our Deco Mesh loaded. And both kinds of Deco Mesh that we will be using today, friends, is just 10-inch standard Deco Mesh. We've got the red and white striped and the dark blue here. And for the poofs, we'll be using the red and white striped. And so what I want you to do, friends, is take your Deco Mesh and just roll it out a little bit maybe 18 inches or so. So you've got a good working bit of Deco mesh, and it's going to be curl side down. So one of the great things about the poof method, friends, is that it really helps reduce the fray. If you're new to Deco mesh, it loves to fray. And so whenever we can cut it as minimally as possible, that really gives us you know, a big reduction in how much fray we'll be stuck with our wreath. So for this method, friends, we're going to start on the lower level of your work wreath frame, and there's no top or bottom yet to our wreath, so it doesn't matter which set of ties you start with. So again, you've got your Deco mesh curl side down, and what I want you to do, friends, is place your hands at the end of your piece of Deco mesh, and keeping your thumbs stationary, you'll use your 8 fingers then to just scrunch and gather that Deco mesh, feeding it back into your thumbs until you've crimped it all together into this little tail. So once you've created that little tail, friends, go ahead and tuck it under. So you're going to take about an inch worth of it and tuck it under. And what we're doing there, friends, is just tucking away that raw edge to really help prevent the fray. And so once you've tucked that under and you've got this inch or so little nub of Deco mesh, go to any set of ties on your lower level, open up those ties into a wide V, and then take your Deco mesh and press it all the way down to the base of that V. And then with your ties, give it a couple of tight twists. And then poke those guys back outwards. And you should have about an inch or so of your Deco mesh as a little nub here. And so we've just secured our Deco mesh down, friends, and we're going to make 10-inch poofs. And so what I want you to do is take your ruler or your self-healing mat in some way. Basically, you're just going to measure 8 inches. And so you'll place your ruler at the ties that you've just added your mesh into, come out to 10 inches. Once you've identified that 10-inch mark, we're going to scrunch and gather just like we did when we started here, friends. Scrunch and gather that mesh into your hands until you reach the end of the piece here. And then I just take my hand and fold that poof upwards. And then I'm going to go to my very next set of ties on the lower level of my wreath frame. And I'm going to take that Deco mesh where I'm pinching it with my fingers at that 10-inch mark, place it into the center of that V all the way down to the base, and give it 2 tight twists and point those ties outwards. And you've just made your very first 10-inch poof. Let's do one more together here, friends, and then we'll zoom through. So I'm going to take my ruler again, placing it right where we left off at that set of ties. I'm going to measure out 10 inches. And we're not looking for perfection here, friends. No one's going to be measuring your poofs. And we're going to scrunch and gather our mesh into our fingers. Then we'll grab a hold of it with one hand, just kind of fluffing my poof out here so it points upwards with the other. We'll come to our very next set of ties, open them up into a wide V, and add your Deco mesh all the way down to the center of the base there of the V, and give it a couple of tight twists to secure it, and point those ties outwards. You just added your second 10-inch poof. All right, friends, at this point, let's just zoom ahead here for the sake of saving a little bit of time on our video, and go ahead and add 10-inch poofs all the way around your lower level, and I'll meet you back here when we get back to our starting point. All right, friends, we're getting ready to add our last poof to the lower level, and you're basically going to follow the exact same format that we've done all along the way. So you're just going to measure that poof out at 10 inches, and we're going to add it right on top of where we started at. So you're just going to carefully untwist those ties, and your Deco mesh should stay right in place. Go ahead and add your last poof right on top of your starting Deco mesh, placing it all the way down to the base. and give it a couple of tight twists and push those guys outwards. And we've just added our last poof to the lower level, friends, and now it's time to jump up to the upper level. And so what we're going to do here at this point is jump our deco mesh up to our upper level, and as you can see, there's a set of ties directly above where we just added our last poof. That's actually not typical, guys. Usually there's one, you know, all the way to the right or to the left. Basically, you want to jump your deco mesh up to the closest set of upper level ties. It doesn't matter if it's, you know, behind where we started or in front of. And we're not going to make a poof, friends. You're just going to basically gather your mesh here into your hand, and we're going to pull it tautly to the first available set of ties. Open them up into a V there on your upper level. Lay that jumping piece of mesh all the way to the base of that V and give it a couple of tight twists and point them back inwards. So as you can see here, friends, there's no poof. It's just a straight line of deco mesh jumping from the lower level to the upper level. And now that we've made that jump, we can carry on with adding our poofs. We're going to follow the exact same method that we did on the lower level, friends. However, your upper level poofs will only be 8 inches. And so this time when you measure, you'll take your ruler, measuring from your set of ties, and instead of measuring out 10 inches, just measure out 8. And then gather your mesh up to create that poof. Jump to your next set of available ties, open them up into a wide V, press your mesh all the way down to the base of that V, and give it a couple of tight twists. That's all there is to it. And excuse me, friends, earlier I told you to point those guys inwards. I was mistaken. Go ahead and point those chenille stems or ties outwards as you go. So we'll do one more together and then we'll zoom ahead. Again, I'm just taking my ruler, placing it at my last set of ties, measuring out to 8 inches, pinching and gathering that deco mesh into my hand to create that 8-inch poof. I'll hold that in my hand and jump to the next set of ties. Add that mesh all the way down to the base of that set of ties. Give it a couple of tight twists. Point those ties outwards. Just fluffing my poof a little bit, and then I'm on to the next. Go ahead and continue adding your 8-inch poofs all the way around your upper level, and I'll meet you back when it's time to wrap up adding our poofs in. We're down to our last upper level poof, friends, and what we're going to do is just like we've done previously, measure out 8 inches to create our 8-inch poof, gather up our deco mesh, and we're going to add this right to where we began on the upper level, friends. So again, just carefully untwist those ties, then lay your last 8-inch poof right on top of where we began. Press that deco mesh all the way down to the base of that V. Give it a couple of tight twists and poke those ties outwards, and you've just added your last 8-inch poof. So go ahead and grab your scissors, friends. And now it's time to cut off our deco mesh. You're going to want to be very careful, and so I'm just going to leave approximately 1 inch or so tail. I'm going to gather that mesh up in my hands and being careful that I've not accidentally got a poof into my scissors. I'm just going to cut that deco mesh off gently and put it aside, and you can see we've got this little 1-inch tail here, and we've just finished adding all of our poofs into our wreath base here, friends. And so now it's time to jump on to the next step. On this particular wreath frame, friends, we've got 16 ties on the entire wreath frame, and so we're going to cut some curls now with our deco mesh to add into those ties. So we've added the poofs in, and now it's time to get the next step ready. Go ahead and sit your wreath off to the side, And what we're going to do, friends, we're going to use both the red and white striped deco mesh that we've got left from our poofs and our navy mesh. And I want you to measure 16 pieces of each mesh cut at 8 inches in length. So you're just going to use your ruler or a self-healing mat, measure out 8 inches to cut an 8-inch piece and set them off to the side. You'll need 16 8-inch pieces of each type of deco mesh. Go ahead and get those cut and I'll meet you back here. All right, friends, so now you should have 16 pieces of the red and white and 16 pieces of your solid blue cut at 8 inches in length. So you should have a nice pile of deco mesh beside you. And I wanted to show you real quickly, you probably noticed as we were preparing to cut our mesh, friends, that I grabbed what looks like a pizza cutter. This is actually a deco mesh rotary cutter. This is a very inexpensive tool to add to your wreath making kit, and if you're making wreaths with any sort of frequency, go ahead and grab this for your wreath making kit along with a self-healing mat. They come in different sizes. These just really let you cut your deco mesh quickly and with a nice clean edge. So definitely something to add to your wreath making toolkit. Now that we've got all of our pieces cut, go ahead and grab your wreath frame here, friends. I would recommend, friends, for this next step that you grab a chip clip or a clothespin. You can actually buy like a 10-pack of these from the Dollar Tree for $1.25. And you'll see why here in just a minute. Let me tell you what we're going to do, friends. We are going to add, for this next step of deco mesh, 2 curls to every single set of ties throughout the entire wreath frame, friends. We're going to add 1 blue and 1 of the red and white striped. And to make a curl, you're going to take your piece of deco mesh, and as you can see, it likes to curl in on itself. And following the natural curve of that curl, you're just going to roll it in onto itself to make basically what looks like a tube. And so the center of that's probably about 1 inch in diameter, and then of course it flares a bit at the end. And just take your chip clip then and give it a pinch right in the middle just to hold that in place for you. And then grab your red and white deco mesh and do the exact same thing, friends. Just roll it into a tube following that natural curve and curl. And so you've got a second tube here. And then you'll grab that first tube or curl, and you're just laying one on top of the other, friends, and you want it to be seam side down. That just helps prevent the fray. And as you can see, I've just made a loose X here. And then starting at any set of ties, it truly matters not, because we're going to add these to every single set. You're going to just grab that X, so 2 curls, and right in the center of those curls, open up a set of ties, press those curls all the way down to the base, give those ties a couple of tight twists, and you've just added your first set of 2 curls into your frame. Let's do one more together, friends, and then we'll speed through. So grab a piece of your blue deco mesh, curl that in onto itself, making a tube, so that that center is approximately 1 inch in diameter. Grab your clip and pinch that guy in the middle just to hold it in place. And then you're going to grab your red and white deco mesh and do the same thing. Roll it into a tube. Hold that with your fingers. Grab that blue deco mesh curl and seam side down for both pieces. Make a loose X. Jump to your very next set of ties. Open them up into a wide V. Press those curls all the way down to the base and give it a couple of tight twists. And poke those ties outwards just so they're easier to find. You've just added your second set of curls. Friends, we're going to do this throughout the entire wreath, so you'll be adding 1 blue curl and 1 red and white curl into every single set of ties, and then I'll meet you back here. Now that we've added all of our curls into our wreath frame, look how cute this is coming along, friends. That's probably every bit of 8 to 10 inches thick. And our next step is to add our decorative sign. By now those beads of glue are fully dry, and so we can go ahead and attach this sign down into our wreath. Now you can totally choose, friends, if you would like your sign, you know, to be placed in the middle, towards the upper or lower, or off to the side. And so to attach the sign, friends, I'm going to use some heavy gauge floral wire stems. They come in a bulk package like this, and they're 18 inches in length, pretty heavy gauge, and so they're really great for adding heavier signs or embellishments into your wreath for that really stable addition. I'll leave a link for these below if you'd like to grab some to add to your toolkit. And so I'm going to take this floral wire stem, friends, and just fold it loosely in half, just for the purposes of identifying that center point. I'm going to run that right through that mounting bracket that we added earlier, and just give it a loose twist or two just to keep it from sliding out. And then we'll do the exact same thing on the other side. Once you've added those floral wire stems into your sign, friends, it's time to go ahead and add your sign into your Deco mesh wreath. So to add it in, friends, you're just going to poke these floral wire stems right through your wreath base. I'm going to keep them fairly close together because they'll spread a little bit as they go down in, and I actually like to place it near a tie if I can to keep it from poking through the mesh. So I'm certainly going to do my best to do so. And then I'm going to just hold on to my sign with one hand and flip this guy over with the other. And I'm going to look for those floral wire stems. And then you're going to want to make sure that those floral wire stems are running on the outside of your wreath frame base, friends, so that they don't go anywhere. I'm just going to give it a couple of loose twists just to make sure it's held in place for just a minute while I look here. So just a couple of twists, and then I'm going to flip that guy over. Make sure it's still where I want it to be, and it is. And then I'm going to take my next set of ties and do the same thing. And then I'll flip it back over once more, and I'm going to give it a handful of more tight twists. So in total, probably 6 or 7. And you want those twists to be at, 80% tension. You want it tight enough that your sign isn't going to go anywhere, but you don't want it so tight that the sign sinks down into your wreath. And now I'm just taking my snips here and trimming off that excess bit of wire. Then we'll grab our needle nose pliers and just take those ends, friends, and kind of curl them down in and under, basically so that if we or our customer grabs their wreath, they aren't going to get poked, or their door's not going to get scratched. And then last but not least, I like to take just a quick bead of glue and run about 1/3 of an inch of glue right over where that wire meets the frame of our wreath, just to give it a little bit extra security. And now we'll give it just a couple of minutes to dry. Once that glue dries, friends, go ahead and flip your wreath over, and it's time to add our bougie bow. So we'll just make a bougie bow to add up here at the center of our wreath, and then we'll add some ribbon tails. So friends, go ahead and grab your choice of wired ribbon. Doesn't matter what the width is. Of course, patriotic themed is preferred for this guy, and you always want to use wired ribbon when you're making your bows. Just keeps that bow in good shape and form, and it really allows you to move those loops and tails as you like. And I always use a 2.5 inch mixed with a 1.5 inch, just for some variety, but you can sure create your bow however you'd like. Friends, I'm going to move pretty quickly through this bow making process for the sake of saving a bit of time here on our video. However, if you still struggle with bow making, I will leave a couple of step-by-step slow moving tutorials for you below in the description of this video so that you can utilize those if you need. All right, friends, we've got our bow made. And I've basically got, if you can see here, 4 loops of the 2.5 inch flag ribbon, 4 loops of the blue, and then 2 loops of the red and white star. I've secured it with a zip tie, a 6-inch zip tie, and I've added a floral wire in to add this guy down into our wreath. Typically I would just attach it right down into some chenille stems, but because I don't have one right smack in the middle, we certainly had to make do. So that's what I've done here. Just going to poke this guy through, kind of lay my deco mesh flat. All right, I'm going to make sure that that bow is basically in the center here, holding it with my hand, and then I'll flip it over. Find those floral wires. Once I'm happy with the placement of that bow, friends, I'll cinch those floral wires up pretty tightly. Of course, that ribbon's not very heavy, so I'm just going to give it 3 or 4 tight twists here. And then I'll trim off the excess bits with our snips like we did earlier. Then I'm going to grab my needle nose pliers, pinch those ends together, and curl those ends back into the wreath. Again, so that we or our customer doesn't get poked and the door doesn't get scratched. Once you've got that curled under, go ahead and just run a quick dollop of hot glue right over those ribbon bits so they stay nice and attached to your wire wreath frame. And we'll give that just a second to dry. All right, friends, we've got our bow added in, and we're not going to fluff that out or work on our tails just yet because we're going to add a few more things here to our wreath. And so what we're going to do at this point, friends, is directly underneath our bow, at the bottom of our wreath, underneath our sign, we're going to add some ribbon tail. So it almost looks like a continuous flow. And so I'm going to just eyeball where I'd like these to hang from. And I think I'm going to put 2 sets, friends, so it looks extra full. And I always like to add more than I think, just because you can always trim it off, but you can't add more on. So that's probably 12 inches in length. I'm going to fold it over onto itself, and then we'll trim that off. And we're going to do 2 sets of tails, remember? So I'm just going to use this piece now as my measuring piece. And again, not looking for perfection. No one's going to be measuring your ribbon. And I want each piece to be about, in total, 4 to 5 inches shorter than the piece before, because we're going to be trimming our tail. So we don't need anything too extra lengthy since we're going to be trimming anyway. And then last but not least, we've got our blue. And so now we'll make this blue piece of ribbon 4 or so inches shorter than the red and white star. So it's like a layering method basically, friends. So I'm going to set one set off to the side here. And I'm just going to lay that guy out. I'm going to make sure each one is centered on top here. There we go. I'm going to pinch that in the middle. You can find the center by just folding that ribbon on top of itself, and then at the bottom point here, that's basically where your middle is. I'm going to scrunch and gather that into a pinch and pleat. Let's see. And I'm just going to add this into 2 available sets of ties right below our sign, 2 side-by sets of ties. So I'm just going to open that V up of those ties, push the ribbon all the way down to the center, and give it a couple of tight twists, probably 3 or 4. And then I'll use my snips and trim off that excess bit of ties, because now we won't be adding anything in. Then I'm just going to take my fingers, friends, and pinch them together and kind of curl them back and out of the way. We've just added our first set of ties. Let's go ahead and add our second. So now what we'll do, friends, up here at the top with our bow, let's go ahead and fluff out our bow. And by fluffing, I'm just gonna start at the bottom level here with those 2.5 inch ribbon loops, and I'm just opening them up with my fingers because remember, since we used wire, they'll take the shape of whatever we like. And I'm basically forming them into an X. Then I'm going to do the exact same thing with that next layer, which is the blue. Opening those loops up with my fingers and forming them into an X. And then we've only got 2 loops of this star, and so I'm just going to let them go directly across from one another. And we'll fluff those loops out once more here in just a minute. So now we've got our tails here, friends. And I'm going to actually angle cut them. You could dovetail them if you would like. And of course, you know my rule of thumb, cut gingerly. You can always take more off, but you can't put it back on once you've cut it. So I'm just cutting at various lengths, leaving them a tad long. And then I'm going to take my fingers, because they're wire, they'll hold our shape, friends, and pull those tails up and over, up and over, and up and over, just to give them a good bump and some height, just like so. So stinking cute. This is going to be a really cute wreath for the 4th of July. That looks adorable. All right, friends, and then at our bottom level, I'm going to do the same thing. Hopefully that's capturing our ribbons here. I'm going to angle cut them at various lengths. And again, not cutting too much because I don't want to overcut. And then once we get them trimmed up, we'll do the same thing and just run our fingers over them to give them a little bump and see what we think. So stinking cute. Just gonna kind of give them a little tug here, friends, so that everything's peeking through and visible. That is adorable. Friends, we're going to flip this guy over and add in one more set of tails right above our ribbon here. So we've got a couple of ties, which is going to actually let us create what looks like an X and just a really nice poofy flow. And so I'm just kind of eyeballing, and we'll use this first measurement as our guiding piece, friends, and we're going to add in 2. So I'm just going to measure by following the length of that first piece that we cut. I think this time we'll use the blue as our next piece. And again, you're going to want each piece to be a few inches shorter than the previous piece because we're going to be trimming those. I would say a good 4 inches shorter. And we're going to follow that same method that we did down below, friends. We're going to just let them basically be like free-flowing tails or streamers here. So we'll set the first set off to the side. And I'm just laying one on top of the other, making sure each piece is centered as I go. Just eyeballing it, no need to measure. And then pick up your ribbon tail stack. Identify that center by folding it in half. There we go. Give it a good pinch. And we're going to go ahead and add that into a set of ties. We're going to give it 2 or 3 super duper tight twists. And then I'm going to take my snips and trim off that leftover bit of tie because we're going to be adding anything else in. I'll curve that back under with my fingers. And we'll add in our last set of tails here. And just pull those tails into a loose V. So as you can see, they create this nice X pattern. And I'm going to angle cut my ends, just like we did with our tails at the lower level friends. And each one's going to be at a different length so that I can see all of these pretty ribbons. And then just like we did below, friends, I'm just going to take my fingers and one by one curl them up and over those bits of ribbon to give them some height and some curvature. And if you want them at a steeper curve, like I showed you below, you're just going to bend your fingers under more, almost like as if you would your hair in a flat iron. Just giving those guys some curve and height. How stinking cute is this? So I'm going to grab my ink pen, and it's recessed, so the point of my ink pen's not out. And we've still got all of these ties throughout our wreath, friends, but they're glittery and whimsical. So instead of cutting them out, I'm just going to curl them around my ink pen right at the end, just to give them a couple of little curves. Almost like a little curly Q. I'm going to work my way through the whole wreath and do this to every single one of them. I think it's just going to add some cuteness. If you don't like that idea, you can sure just trim them out if you'd like. But I'm going to take a minute here and just curl these guys up and see what I think. I've changed out to a dowel rod, friends. My pen was too slippery. Yeah, I think that's going to be adorable. So I'm going to work my way through and curl these guys up, and I'll meet you back here in just a minute. This beauty is finished, friends. Thank you for spending time creating with me today. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. It helps my little channel to grow. And if you are new here, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Thanks, friends. Happy crafting.